The massive crystal chambers of Station Alpha sparkled under the light of 3 nearby suns. Thousands of alien representatives from across the galaxy sat in the tiered seats, their varied forms creating a living rainbow of colors and shapes. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others sat in traditional chairs, and a few existed as pure energy contained within special fields. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Thomas Gray, his simple black suit standing out among the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of the other species. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his back was straight, and his voice never wavered as he addressed the Galactic Council. "For 300 years," he said, "humanity has played by your rules. We limited our military ships. We shared our resources. We accepted your guidance on which technologies we could develop." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We trusted you." The Council's High Chancellor Vale, a tall being with silver skin that rippled like mercury, leaned forward. "And we have guided humanity well, have we not? Your species has prospered under our wisdom." Gray smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. With a click, a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a secret meeting from 50 years ago, where the Council's inner circle discussed ways to keep humanity from growing too powerful. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Some representatives stood up in protest, while others sank deeper into their seats. The High Chancellor's silver skin darkened to a stormy gray. "Where did you get that recording?" Vale demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We've known for years," Gray replied calmly. "We just needed to gather enough evidence." "Did you really think you could keep thousands of human scientists from noticing how you changed our research data? How you accidentally corrupted our more advanced experiments?" A representative from the Outer Rim, a bug-like creature named Click, raised all 4 of its arms. "But the restrictions were for peace. Humans advanced too quickly. Your warfare technology was never the real issue," Gray cut in. "You feared our ability to unite others, to build alliances, to show other species that your guidance was really just control." The council chamber grew quiet. In the silence, Gray walked to the center platform and placed a simple paper envelope on the podium. Even in the age of advanced technology, humans still use paper for their most important documents. It was one of their oddities that the Council had never fully understood. "This contains Earth's formal withdrawal from all Council treaties, effective immediately." Gray's voice was firm, but held a note of sadness. "We will no longer accept your restrictions. We will no longer pretend that your peacekeeping ships aren't watching our planets, and we will no longer stay silent about what you've done to other species." Vale stood up, his silver form towering over his podium. "You cannot do this. The treaties were signed under false pretenses," Gray said. "As of this moment, Earth considers them void. Any attempt to enforce them will be considered an act of war." He turned to face the wider chamber. "To any species who have suffered similar treatment, know that Earth's ports remain open to you. We will not forget our friends." As Gray walked toward the exit, the chamber descended into chaos. Representatives shouted questions, demands, and threats. Some were already calling their homeworlds, while others huddled in small groups, whispering urgently. Just before he reached the door, Gray turned one last time. "You taught us well, honored council members. You showed us exactly how to manipulate, control, and divide. But you forgot one crucial lesson." His smile was genuine this time. "Humans learn from example, and we're very good at improving on our teachers' methods." The doors closed behind him with a soft click that somehow echoed louder than all the chaos in the chamber. The age of council control was over. A new era of galactic politics had begun, and for the first time in centuries, no one knew what would happen next. In his private shuttle heading back to Earth, Gray looked at the station growing smaller behind him. "Send the signal," he told his pilot. Across the galaxy, human agents began implementing plans centuries in the making. The Council hadn't just failed to stop human advancement. They had given humanity time to prepare. Council member Reed watched the holographic displays in his private chamber with growing concern. As a member of the Cloud People, his gaseous form shifted from its usual calm blue to an anxious green as report after report came in. It had been just 7 days since the humans had walked away from the Council. 7 days, and already the carefully built system was cracking at its foundations. "Display the outer rim situation," he commanded. The hologram shifted to show a string of planets along the galaxy's edge. Nearly half of them were flashing red, indicating they had already declared their independence from Council control. His assistant, a small robotic unit named Pat, rolled forward. "Sir, the Mining Alliance has just announced they're stopping all shipments to Council worlds." Reed's form swirled faster. The Mining Alliance controlled most of the rare metals needed for advanced spaceship construction. Without them, the Council's peacekeeping fleet couldn't be maintained. "Show me their announcement," he said. The hologram changed to show the Mining Alliance's leader, a rock-like being named Stone, standing proud. "For too long, we have sold our resources at prices set by the Council. Now we know this was part of their control. We set our own prices now, and we choose our own customers." A different alert flashed. Reed turned to see the latest news. 3 more species had announced they were leaving the Council. Not major powers, but each one had been under similar restrictions to humanity. "Pat," Reed said slowly, "show me the historical records. How many species have had their technology advancement limited by Council decree?" Numbers scrolled across the screen. Reed's gaseous form paled to nearly white as he read. 47 species, 47 potential allies for humanity's cause. Another alert. The Trade Federation, which had always stayed neutral in Council politics, was opening new routes to Earth and its allies. Their announcement was simple but devastating. Business knows no political boundaries. Reed moved to his communication panel, meaning to contact the High Chancellor. But before he could, a priority message flashed across his screen. The warrior clans of the Inner Core, species that had fought each other for millennia before the Council enforced peace, were meeting together, without Council supervision. "Pat, get me a secure line to Ambassador Gray," Reed said suddenly. "Sir." The robot's lights blinked in surprise. "That would be against Council protocol." "The Council's protocols are what got us into this mess." Reed's form had settled into a determined purple. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't just break free. They showed everyone else the chains they didn't know they were wearing. The screen lit up with Gray's face. He didn't seem surprised to see Reed calling. "Council member Reed," Gray said with a small smile. "I was wondering who would be first to understand." "You're not destroying diplomacy," Reed said. "You're reshaping it. All these species suddenly breaking away. They're not running from cooperation. They're running toward freedom. Freedom to trade, to develop, to form their own alliances." Gray nodded. "Tell me, Council member, how do you think the Cloud People would grow if they weren't bound by the Council's protective restrictions?" Reed's form shifted through several colors as he considered this. His people had always been peaceful, which was why they held a Council seat. But they had also never been allowed to expand beyond their home systems, always for some diplomatic reason or another. "The old system is falling," Gray continued gently. "But something new is rising. Something better. The question is, will you help build it, or try to preserve what's already broken?" Reed looked at his Council insignia, floating in his gaseous form. He had sworn to serve galactic peace. Maybe it was time to do that in a new way. "Tell me more," he said to Gray. Behind him, on the holographic displays, more and more systems were turning red, breaking free from a system they now knew had been holding them back all along. Marcus White's hands shook as he stared at the ancient data crystal in the Council archives. Next to him, his alien colleague Blue floated in a containment field, her energy form pulsing with bright colors of excitement and fear. "Play it again," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. The hologram flickered to life, showing a Council meeting from over 2,000 years ago. The beings in the recording looked different from the current council members, but their words were clear enough. "The younger species must never know," one of them said. "If they realize how quickly they could advance without our interference, we would lose control." Blue's energy form flickered red with anger. "Look at the date stamped," she said. "This was when my people were told we couldn't develop quantum communication because it was too dangerous for our level of advancement." Marcus nodded, his tired eyes scanning through more files. "They did it to everyone, not just humans. Look at this. The Mining Alliance was capable of developing instant transport technology 300 years ago. The Council sabotaged their research and blamed it on natural limitations of their species. The archive room was deep beneath Station Alpha, filled with rows of data crystals that held the true history of the galaxy. As senior archivists, Marcus and Blue had access to everything, but they had never thought to question the older records until humanity's dramatic exit from the Council. "We need to copy everything," Blue said, her form moving closer to the computer terminal. "The Council will try to delete it all once they realize we know." Marcus pulled out a special data drive that human intelligence had prepared years ago. "They won't be fast enough. Humanity suspected something like this. We just needed proof." He started downloading files as quickly as he could. A red light began flashing at their terminal. "Security scan in progress," a mechanical voice announced. "They're checking the archives." Blue's energy form pulsed with panic. "Marcus, if they catch us." "They won't." Marcus kept working, his fingers flying over the controls. "But we need to get this data out now. Can you create a distraction?" Blue's energy form stretched toward the ceiling. "I think it's time the archive had some power problems." She merged with the electrical system, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the building. "Warning. Power fluctuation detected. Emergency systems engage." Marcus smiled as the security scan stopped. In the confusion, he finished copying the most damaging files. Proof of sabotage research, altered development reports, and secret meetings where the Council planned how to keep species from growing too powerful. "Blue, we need to split up," he said, pocketing the data drive. "Take this." He handed her a smaller crystal. "It's a backup. Get it to the human embassy if I don't make it." "But..." No time to argue. "Security will be here soon." He grabbed his bag and headed for the exit. Whatever happens, this truth needs to get out. They parted ways just as security forces rushed into the archive. Marcus walked calmly toward the public levels, just another human archivist doing his job. Behind him, he could hear Blue leading the guards on a wild chase through the electrical systems. In his pocket, the data drive felt heavy with the weight of its secrets. Humanity had guessed the Council was hiding things, but the truth was bigger than anyone had imagined. Thousands of species held back for millennia. Progress delayed. Discoveries hidden. When he reached his small ship in the diplomatic dock, Marcus sent a coded message to Earth. Package secured. Evidence worse than expected. Beginning distribution. Within hours, copies of the files would reach every major species in the galaxy. The Council wouldn't be able to stop it. Human information networks had been preparing for this moment for years. As his ship broke away from Station Alpha, Marcus watched the massive structure grow smaller. Soon, everyone would know the truth. The real question was, what would they do with it? In the distance, he saw more ships leaving the station. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of species. The great exodus was beginning, and this time, there would be no going back to the old ways of control and secrets. Captain Jane Stone stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship, Peace Through Understanding, watching the space lanes through her main viewport. The sight before her would have been impossible just 2 weeks ago. A massive trading ship from the Mining Alliance was being escorted by vessels from 3 different species, all of whom had been bitter enemies under Council rule. Now they worked together, protecting valuable cargo without any Council oversight. "Captain," her first officer said, "we're picking up more ships leaving Council space. Looks like the warrior clans are moving in force. Jane nodded, studying the tactical display. The warrior clans had been kept apart for centuries by council peacekeepers. Everyone had expected them to go to war the moment the council's power broke. Instead, something remarkable was happening. "Put the clan leader's transmission on screen," she ordered. The screen lit up, showing Leader Thunder, his scaled face bearing the marks of many battles. "Earth vessel," he rumbled. "We request safe passage through your patrol zone." "Granted," Jane replied. "But I'm curious. Your whole fleet is moving. Should we be concerned?" Thunder's face broke into what might have been a smile. "The old council would say yes. They always said we needed watching. But we're not moving to war. We're going to the Free Systems Conference. All clans together." Jane tried to hide her surprise. The Free Systems Conference was a meeting being organized by former council worlds, a chance to build new alliances without council interference. The fact that the warrior clans were attending willingly was incredible. "Need an escort?" she offered, following the new diplomatic protocols Earth had established. "No need," Thunder replied. "We're traveling with the Trade Federation ships. Good business, protecting merchants. Better than fighting old wars." The transmission ended, and Jane turned to her crew. They all wore the same expression of cautious hope. The galaxy was changing, but not in the way anyone had predicted. Her communication officer spoke up. "Captain, incoming message from Earth Command. They're forwarding data from Marcus White, the archivist who exposed the Council's secrets." "On screen," Jane ordered. The data showed the true history of the warrior clans. The Council hadn't kept them apart for peace. They had feared their potential for cooperation. Ancient records showed the clans had once been on the verge of forming a joint civilization before the Council interfered. "More ships detected," her sensor officer reported. "Multiple species, all heading to the Free Systems Conference." Jane watched as vessels of all sizes and shapes moved through her patrol zone. Some were former enemies, others old allies, all moving freely for the first time in generations. Her tactical display looked like a dance of lights as ships moved in newly formed groups, protecting and helping each other. "Message from the trading post at Point 7, her communications officer said. "They're requesting help setting up a neutral meeting ground for species to discuss joint ventures." "Set course," Jane ordered, "but not too close. Let them work it out themselves." That was the new Earth policy. Be available to help, but don't interfere. Let species find their own way to work together. It was the opposite of how the Council had done things. As her ship moved through space, James saw more signs of change. Species that the Council had labeled as too aggressive were setting up joint research stations. Races that had been kept isolated were establishing trade routes. The power vacuum wasn't leading to chaos. It was allowing natural alliances to form. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "do you think the humans planned this? Did we know this would happen?" Jane watched as another group of ships passed by, former enemies working together without a single Council peacekeeper in sight. "I think," she said slowly, "we hoped. Sometimes you have to break something completely to build it back better." In the distance, more ships appeared, all heading to the Free Systems Conference. The galaxy was rebuilding itself, not through force or control, but through choice and cooperation, just as humanity had believed it could. Ambassador Thomas Gray stood in the Great Hall of the newly constructed Freedom Station, watching as representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber. The station, built in neutral space by a joint effort of 15 different species, was everything the Council Station Alpha was not: open, transparent, and built for genuine cooperation rather than control. "The Mining Alliance delegation is ready to present their proposal," his assistant told him, handing over a data pad. Gray nodded, taking a moment to study the room. Unlike the Council's rigid seating arrangement that placed powerful species above others, this hall was arranged in a circular pattern. Every species sat at the same level. Some floated, some stood, some sat, but all were equal. Ambassador, a deep voice called. Gray turned to see Leader Thunder of the warrior clans approaching, accompanied by a representative of the Trade Federation. We have reached an agreement about protecting trade routes. Without any human input, Gray asked, smiling. Thunder's scaled face showed amusement. We didn't need mediators. The Trade Federation made a good offer. Our ships protect their cargo. They give us priority on rare materials. Simple, fair, good for everyone. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. Species finding their own ways to work together, making deals that benefited both sides. No council oversight required. The main doors opened again, and Gray watched as Blue, the energy being who had helped expose the council's secrets, floated in with several other energy-based species. They had formed their own research group, sharing discoveries that the council had kept hidden from them for centuries. The Free Species Alliance Charter is ready for final review, his assistant said, bringing up the document on a large holographic display. Gray read through the main points one more time. All species have the right to develop their technology without restriction. Trade agreements must be negotiated freely between willing partners. Military forces remain under local control, but can form voluntary defense pacts. Knowledge and scientific discoveries are to be shared openly. Any species can join or leave the alliance at will. No single species or group can impose rules on others without consensus. It was the opposite of how the Council had worked. Instead of control, there was cooperation. Instead of restrictions, there was freedom. Instead of forced peace, there was willing partnership. A quiet buzz filled the room as more representatives arrived. Gray recognized delegates from the Outer Rim worlds, their ships now free to travel without Council permission. Next came the representatives of the newly formed Science Cooperative, species working together to advance technology that the Council had banned. "We're ready to begin," his assistant said. Gray stepped up to the central platform, not raised above the others, but simply a spot where everyone could see and hear clearly. The room quieted naturally, without any need for formal calls to order. "Friends," he began, "today we're not here to create new rules or impose restrictions. We're here to acknowledge what has already happened. In the 3 weeks since the Council's control ended, you have all shown something remarkable. You've proven that different species can work together without being forced to do so." He gestured to the various groups around the room. The warrior clans protect trade ships. The Mining Alliance shares resources fairly. The Science Cooperative makes discoveries that benefit everyone. You did this yourselves, without anyone telling you how. The holographic display showed a map of known space with the growing network of new trade routes, research stations, and cooperative ventures lighting up like stars. "This is the Free Species Alliance," Gray continued. "Not a new council, not a new set of rulers. Just a place where we can all meet as equals, work together when we choose to, and help each other grow." Around the room, representatives nodded in agreement. They had tasted true freedom and cooperation. There would be no going back to the old ways of control and restrictions. The new age of galactic civilization had begun, and it was already proving better than anyone had imagined. High Chancellor Vale stood in his private chamber aboard Station Alpha, his silver skin dark with anger as he watched another report of ships deserting the Council's peacekeeping fleet. The once mighty Armada, which had enforced council will across the galaxy, was melting away like ice in sunlight. "Send the order again," he commanded his remaining loyal staff. "Any world that trades with Earth or their allies will face complete economic isolation." But even as he spoke, the response came back on his screens. The Trade Federation's message was simple: you cannot isolate everyone. We go where business takes us. Vale's form rippled with frustration. He turned to his tactical display, showing the Council's remaining loyal systems in blue and the growing Free Species Alliance in red. Each day, more blue points turned red. "High Chancellor," one of his advisors said nervously, "the Mining Alliance has cut off our supply of quantum crystals. Without them, we can't power the station's defense systems at full strength." Impossible. Vale slammed his hand down. They cannot refuse a direct council order. They already have, sir. And they're not alone. The Energy Beings Collective has stopped maintaining our long-range communication networks. The warrior clans have withdrawn their representatives from our peacekeeping forces, even the neutral world's heir. Enough. Vale's silver skin had turned almost black. Deploy the emergency fleet. We'll show them what happens when they defy council authority. In the command center of the council's last loyal battle fleet, Admiral West faced a crisis. The ships were ready for launch, but his crews were not. As he walked through the corridors of his flagship, he saw more and more empty posts. His communication officer approached with a grim face. "Sir, another 100 crew members have declared their independence. They're requesting shuttle transport to Free Alliance space." West looked at his crew manifest. Species that had served together under council command for generations were choosing to leave. Not in anger or rebellion, but simply walking away to join the new alliance. Back on Station Alpha, Vale received the news with growing despair. How many ships can still launch? Less than a quarter of the fleet has full crews, his advisor reported. And those that remain? Sir, we're receiving messages from crew members across all ships. They want to know why we hid the truth about technological suppression. They're asking questions we can't answer. Vale turned to his final option. He opened a channel to Earth's embassy. "Ambassador Gray," he said when the human appeared on screen. "You've made your point. Let's discuss terms for maintaining stability." Gray's face showed no triumph, only calm certainty. "There are no terms to discuss, High Chancellor. The free species of the galaxy are already maintaining their own stability. They don't need the Council's help." "You don't understand what you've done," Vale insisted. "The peace we maintained was based on control and lies." Gray cut in. "Look at your screens, Chancellor. Look at what's happening. Species you said could never cooperate are working together. Races you claimed needed restrictions are advancing peacefully. The galaxy isn't falling into chaos without council control. It's flourishing with freedom." As if to emphasize his words, another alert sounded. The last major neutral system had just announced its decision to join the Free Species Alliance. Vale watched his tactical display as more and more of his blue points turned red. The Council's power had never truly been in its fleets or its laws. It had been in the willing cooperation of species who believed they needed guidance. Now that the truth was known, that power was gone forever. "It's over," his advisor said quietly. "We should evacuate the station while we still can." Vale's silver form seemed to age before their eyes. In just 1 month, the system he had helped maintain for centuries had crumbled. Not through war or violence, but through the simple power of truth and choice. Across the galaxy, the last council ships were landing, their crews walking away to join the new future humanity had helped create. The age of control was over. The age of true cooperation had begun. The Great Hall of Freedom Station was packed with representatives from over 500 species. Ambassador Thomas Gray stood next to Captain James Stone and Marcus White, watching as the final pieces of humanity's grand plan fell into place. "Show them." Gray nodded to Marcus. The archivist stepped forward and activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. It showed a document dated from 300 years ago, when humanity first joined the Council. This, Marcus announced, was called the Phoenix Protocol. While the Council thought they were restricting humanity's growth, we were learning, watching, planning. Not for war, not for revenge, but for this moment. The document showed detailed studies of every species in Council space, not their weaknesses, but their strengths. Not how to control them, but how to free them. Captain Stone stepped forward next. "Every patrol we ran under Council orders taught us more. We saw how species naturally worked together when the Council wasn't watching. We learned which restrictions were holding back the most potential cooperation." The hologram shifted to show the new star maps. Trade routes were growing exponentially. Research stations were sharing discoveries. Military vessels from former enemy species now ran joint patrols to protect merchant ships. Humanity's greatest strength, Gray said to the gathered representatives, was never our technology or our military power. It was our ability to look at a broken system and imagine something better. Blue floated forward, her energy form glowing brightly. The humans did what none of us could. They showed us the truth about ourselves, not as separate, restricted species, but as equals capable of true cooperation. A hologram changed again, showing the rapid progress of the past 2 months. Species that the Council had labeled as too aggressive were now leading peacekeeping missions. Races that had been called too unstable were making breakthrough discoveries in science and medicine. Leader Thunder of the warrior clan stood up. We were told we needed watching, needed controlling. But look at what we've achieved without chains. My clans protect trade ships not because we're ordered to, but because it benefits everyone. This is true strength. Around the room, more representatives began to share their stories. The Mining Alliance spoke of new technologies they'd developed by working with energy beings. The Trade Federation described how free commerce had led to cultural exchange and understanding between former enemies. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't about destroying the Council, Gray explained. It was about proving that genuine cooperation is stronger than forced compliance. Every restriction the Council created showed us another opportunity for natural alliance. Marcus activated the final display, showing the completed charter of the Free Species Alliance. Unlike the Council's massive book of regulations, it was remarkably simple. We hold these truths to be self-evident across all sapient species, that all beings have the right to advance, to trade, to learn, and to choose their own path. That true peace comes not from control, but from cooperation. That we are stronger together than apart. The room erupted in approval. Species that could cheer did so. Those that couldn't expressed their agreement in their own ways, flashing lights, releasing pleasant scents, generating harmonious vibrations. The Council thought humanity was dangerous because we advance quickly, Gray said as the celebration continued. But they missed the most important thing about humans. We don't just advance ourselves. We help others advance too. Because that's what real friends do. As the charter was formally adopted, Gray looked out at the gathered species. The Council had spent millennia building walls between them. Humanity had spent 3 centuries figuring out how to tear those walls down. Outside the station's windows, ships from hundreds of worlds flew together in a grand parade. There were no peacekeepers needed, no enforced formations, just beings from across the galaxy, choosing to fly together in harmony. The age of control was over. The age of true cooperation had begun. And it all started because humanity decided to show the galaxy a better way. The Phoenix Protocol was complete. From the ashes of the old system, something new and better had risen, just as humanity had planned all along.